Either way.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you, Council, for coming, and I'd like to welcome everyone in the audience. And at this moment, I would like to call upon Councillor Jake Siemens for the opening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last time I did an opening, I talked about the chair that you sit in. So upon review, I reviewed all the chairs that the current councillors sit in as well. So these chairs are, I think they were purchased 1968, the one that Adrian is sitting in, or Councillor Penner is sitting in. So some of these chairs are older than the councillors themselves. As a reminder, though, town of Steinbach was incorporated in 1946, and up until 1971 it ran a ward system. There were 4 wards that divided the community equally, and town council was made up of 4 councillors and a mayor. Up until 1975, there was a council election every single year. All terms were for 2 years with 2 seats and alternating wards that were elected each year. In 1961, the wards were redistributed and a 5th member of council was added. In 1973, town council moved to 6 councillors and a mayor, and it remains that today. In 1976, for the first time in 30 years, there was no council election. And from 1977 until 1998, council terms were 3 years, and they moved to 4-year terms in 1998, which we currently have. From 1946 to this last election, there's 112 different individuals have run for Steinbach Council. Now, if names mean anything, if your last name was Penner, 10 of them ran for election and 7 of them were elected. If you were a Barkman, 5 of them ran for election and 4 were elected. If your last name was Reimer, there were 6 of those that ran for election and 5 were elected. But if you were a Taves, you were guaranteed to be elected. They've all been elected, all 4 of them. But if your last name was Peters and 2 of them ran for election, none of them have been elected. But interestingly, if your first name is Jake, and there were 5 of them, 3 of them were elected. Now, the most famous one was Jake Epp, who became our Member of Parliament after his term on Town Council of the day. But Jake Epp's name is spelled J-A-K-E, but on the pictures in our front vestibule, his name is spelled J-A-C. As a matter of fact, current councillor Jake Hebert is the only Jake to spell his name J-A-K-E, which is unusual. But if your first name was Abe, and there were 7 Abes who ran for election, 5 of them were elected. But also 2 Abes lost when they ran as incumbents. If your first name was Henry, there was 4 of those. 2 of the times they got elected. And if your first name was John, there's 7 Johns ran for election and 5 times they were elected. And if your first name was Peter, twice you were elected out of 5 that ran. 7 times since 1946, an incumbent has lost their seat when they ran for re-election. Our longest serving councillor was Harold Unger, 31 years. He sat in these council chambers. He lost 1 election in 1963 due to a discussion on this property with the old Cornelson School ground and the amount of money that they were going to spend building this civic center. And all the councillors who ran that term the current councillors lost their seats. But he regained his seat 1 year later in 1964 and had a council seat till 1989. He won 14 out of 15 elections. The second longest serving is Les Magnuson. He spent 18 years as a councillor from 1977 to 1995, then spent 12 years as our mayor from 1995 to 2006, a total of 30 years on city council. Art Rempel sat for 18 years from 1992 to 2010, and Dwight Reimer was on council for 17 years from 1989 to 2006. 4 councillors from these chambers went on to represent Steinbach and area in the Manitoba legislature. L.A. Barkman, Bob Banman, Helmut Pankratz, and Jim Penner. And 1 councillor Jacob became our Member of Parliament. There have been 6 ladies who've run for Steinbach Council. 3 were successful in gaining a seat: Carrie Penner, Ann Friesen, and Susan Penner. Well, it's great to look at all these numbers, Mr. Mayor. And it's interesting to reel and look at the different angles of how and why seats were won and maybe lost in many different ways. The history of the position is that they have been honored, and we have been honored to sit in these chairs. It has a long tradition, and we should be honored, and as we're able to carry on the legacies left behind who served Steinbach for the past 73 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Siemens. Great opening. Okay, we go to number 3. We have agenda in front of us. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Bill Hebert, second by Councillor Damien Hebert, or Peters, Penner. All these names got me confused. If I get your name wrong today, it's actually because we've heard so many names. Was there any comments? Councillor Hebert?
No, that's pretty clear.
Nothing in closing? Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? That is approved. We have the number 4, we have the minutes of the March 19th, 2019 regular council meeting. That's on page 1. You've all had the chance to review them. I need a motion to approve. Councillor Susan Penner, second by Councillor Jake Siemens. Any comments? Nothing in closing. We'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is approved. Any business arising from the minutes?
Let's make a motion to excuse Councillor Swagstra.
Very good. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Damon Penner. Okay, a call for the question. All those in favor?
Make a comment.
Oh,
I just want to say I'm very proud of him for missing a meeting. Doesn't happen often.
I'll tell you, we've had a
For a
long
good
talk.
reason, yeah.
Me and him had a long talk about this, and
Well, that's good.
he's at a very important event.
Yeah.
And
So it's
his son asked him to be at this event, and it's time to put family first. He did well. He did very well. Anyways, call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. We are come now to 6A of the public hearing, Variance V-2019-09, Reid 425 PTH 12 North. That's on page 7 of your package. I would like to close the council meeting at this time and open the public hearing. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, this application for variance file V-2019-09 for 425 PTH 12 North. The owner of the property is 7372567 Manitoba Inc. And 7372559 Manitoba Inc. The applicants for the variance are Alvin and Walter Hildebrandt. Purpose of the variance application, City of Steinbach zoning bylaw number 2100 requires that all parking stalls must be hard surfaced. The applicant is requesting that the required parking stalls not be hard surfaced. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on file. With respect to the application, it does arise due to a particular issue with transition. City of Steinbach original zoning bylaw actually required all required parking stalls to be hard surfaced. With the recent update to city zoning bylaw, now zoning bylaw 2100, there is an opportunity for properties that front on graveled surface roadways to not have to hard surface their parking. However, this particular property was subject to building permit application prior to the change to the city zoning bylaw. As such, the requirements and conditions under which the permit was issued required the hard surfacing, and therefore the resulting request from the owners to have council consider the variance. Given the fact that Steinbach City Council has previously approved several other variance requests to waive the hard surfacing requirement in cases that are similar to this one, recommendation from administration is that council approve the request.
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Is the applicant present, and would they like to speak?
I think
We'll have to take the podium, state your name and your address, please.
Walter Hildebrandt. I'm from Kleefeld, Manitoba. The only thing I'd like to add is we do deal with agricultural equipment, and so paving the lot wouldn't really make sense for us. We do understand it's parking stalls, but it is basically just the frontage of our lot, the road that passes our lot there. As you can see on the picture there, that there is quite a bit of traffic on there, and trucks, and there's mud and gravel that is swept onto the lot if we were to pave or hard surface the lot there. So that is our only thing that I'd like to add. But I think it was all in there that he read there, yeah.
Okay, I'll get you to stay at the podium,
Okay.
just for a second, in case we have questions from council. Council, are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, then I guess you're home free tonight.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone here wanting to object to this file? Is there anyone here wanting to object? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here wanting to object? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and we will open the council meeting again. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Susan
Move
Bennett.
to approve.
Move to approve. Second by Councillor Siemens. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As administration indicated, this is consistent with the way council's been going in terms of not requiring parking lots that are up against a gravel road to have to pave. In addition, we've changed our bylaws that going forward, this wouldn't necessarily even need to come to council, but just due to the timing of it, it'd have to come through here. So it just makes sense that we would be consistent and move ahead with this approval.
Anything further? Anything in closing? Okay. Well, council, I guess just to be consistent with our bylaw, I guess this is the proper approach to do. So I will call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that there is no delegation tonight, so we'll be moving on to number 8. Number 8A, reports and recommendations from the city manager. This is the front load garbage truck. Read the tender award. That is on page 18 of your package. Mr. Workentine, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There was a tender process that administration proceeded with earlier this winter, requesting bids in connection with the proposed purchase of a front-load garbage truck for commercial services. These tenders were opened March 1st, 2019, with 5 bids from 4 suppliers having been received. 2 of the bids were considered valid and were considered, and as a result, the recommendation from administration is to award the contract to supply a front-load garbage truck to London Machinery, Inc., being the low qualified bid in the amount of $326,515 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Workentine. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Siemens?
Motion to approve.
Councillor Hebert? You are seconding? Okay. Okay. Councillor Siemens, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we heard, we put out a tender for a front-load garbage truck. And it was, the recommendation is that London Machinery, we buy it from them for $326,515, which is well below the budget that we had set at $460,000. So, and this money will be coming out of the Environmental Reserve Fund.
Anything further, Councillor Hebert?
So I would just like to add, speaking to Mr. Workentine this afternoon, and it appears the only reason this issue is in front of council today is because it's exceeded the $350,000. Although we hear that's $326,000 for the truck. The taxes would bring it over the $350,000, and that's why it's before council today.
Anything further of council? Anything in close? Okay, council, this is part of our ongoing equipment replacement. This is a needed piece of equipment for our city, and I think it's very good that it's coming in under budget. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That'll take us to 8B. That is Reid and Associates Chartered Professional Accountants Incorporated, the audit proposal. That is on page 25 of your package. And Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, starting on page 25, there is a proposal that has been received by administration with respect to a request looking for a firm to provide auditing services for the City of Steinbach for the 3-year term beginning in 2019. Unfortunately, the current firm, Chambers and Fraser Professional Accountants, whom the city has used for decades, is no longer able to provide service, and we must search for an alternate auditor. This review has been considered by administration and the city's senior manager of finance, and we are convinced that Reid and Associates would be able to provide a very good auditing service for the city over the next 3 years, and recommend that City Council approve this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Okay, Council, this is a audit proposal. The contract for this will be for 3 years, as Mr. Workington stated, and on page 29, it shows the increment value of how it will progress. Now on page 25, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a move? Councillor Damien Penner, second by Councillor Bill Hebert. Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is unfortunate that the previous auditor is moving on. However, I feel quite comfortable with Reid and Associates, being that they are well-versed with municipalities. They have over 16 other municipalities that they currently audit for, and have decades of experience with their principal auditors as well in the firm. So I am quite confident in moving forward with this proposal from Reid and Associates.
Anything
Thank
further?
you, Mr. Mayor. I heard they came highly recommended, so I feel with experience, like Damon said, I think we should go with it.
Anything further from council? Anything in closing? Yes, council, that is true. They come highly recommended by Terry and the chartered accountants that we've used before. Also, the member that will be doing our audit has also worked for Terry. So I think this is a good fit, and I think we have lots of confidence going forward. So I will call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That brings us to 8C. That is the arm of Hanover. Read the Development Plan Bylaw 2437-19 and Zoning Bylaw 2438-19. You can find this on page 31 of your package. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The Arm of Hanover recently completed its 5-year review and update of its development plan and zoning bylaw. The proposed or the public notice that was received, that you find on page 33 of your agenda package, was received by the city's administration office recently, indicating that a public hearing will be held with respect to a proposed amendment to Hanover's development plan. The proposed changes are further amendments to the plan just revised, and is proposing to designate a quarter section of land just west of the joint boundary between the City of Steinbach and the Arm of Hanover from agriculture to rural residential. Based on the information that I've provided in the package, it is my view that the proposed amendments are inconsistent with the Arm of Hanover development plan, provincial policy, and the joint Steinbach-Hanover annexation agreement. My recommendation is that should council review the proposed amendments and find that there are concerns that mirror those that I am recommending, or at least indicating that City Council formally object or authorize the formal objection to proposed arm of Hanover Development Plan Bylaw 2437-19 and zoning bylaw 2438-19.
Thank you, Mr. Workentine. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
I'd like to make a motion that we formally object.
Okay. And Councillor Penner? Second? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
Thank you. This is similar, actually, to what we dealt with a couple of weeks ago with LeBrokery, where development in the rural areas is, I guess, leapfrogging to boundaries, their boundaries, instead of developing from centers out. So to me, this is quite similar, so I think it's important that we object. There's many reasons for it. It doesn't go with what provincial land use policies are in terms of eventually connecting to city services. That would present a problem. There's many reasons why this isn't good. In addition, it is inconsistent, as administration said, with what was planned together with the Joint Action Committee with the annexation. So this comes as a bit of a surprise, quite frankly. So I think it's prudent if we formally object.
Thank you. Anything further?
Yes, just to elaborate a little bit more, with provincial land use policies, it states, and this is quote, development outside an urban center must be located in a manner so as not to impede the center's orderly expansion, which this is exactly, essentially what that'll do. This land was originally in the long-term vision of the annexation agreement, which the province then drew back. It's a quarter parcel that's just west of Homestead Crescent, and what this really does is it blocks off any potential for future land development to the southwest of the city as well, being that that's the only undeveloped lot that would allow us to bring sewer services through to our current existing lagoon. So this is something that is absolutely essential to future land growth, city growth in that area, and we need to make sure that that is not developed in such a way that doesn't meet up to city standards.
Anything further of council? Yes, Councillor Reid.
I'd just like to voice that I do have a couple of concerns here, and I see it different than the one we just dealt with LeBrokery. Concern I have is that this land, when we recently annexed that area in January of 2018, we did not include this land. We did not have a vested interest in Homestead. And this land here is on the other side of Homestead, it's west of Homestead Crescent. And so my concern is if we don't have a vested interest in Homestead, why do we have a vested interest in land that's beyond that? Having said that, though, in the bylaws and in the agreement we have with Hanover, section 212.26 says very specifically, in general, land division shall be discouraged within the transitional area. Any proposal considered by council must go through a consultative process with the city of Steinbach to evaluate the potential impact on both municipalities. And in reading the presentation we have here, I don't see anything that there was a consultative agreement or consultative process between Hanover and Steinbach. And that concerns me that Hanover would not have gone that route prior to bringing this to our council today. So those are my two concerns.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Yeah, thank you, council. I am going to support the motion because I do believe that there are numerous things wrong with this proposal, but the biggest one for me is exactly what's been talked about, the pulps or the provincial land use policies and how this does not fit in with that because it impedes growth of an urban area when you develop lots that are virtually unserviceable by urban services. So for that reason, that's the big reason, but there are other smaller reasons that were also mentioned by council. And thank you for all your comments, and I will call for the question. All those in favor of the denying and opposed, that is carried. Okay, we will move, that takes us to 9A, which is accounts payable. That's in the back of the book. We've all had the opportunity to look them over. Do I have a mover? Councillor Damian Penner, second by Councillor Jake Hebert. Any comments?
Discussion.
Okay, nor do I have anything, so I will call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 9B, Bylaw 2116, rezoning minor, first and second reading. That is on page 48 of your agenda packet. Mr. Workman, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is a bylaw proposing to amend the zoning of a number of parcels within the Lexington Village development. The reason why this is arising is the original zoning for this land was completed well before the subdivision process occurred. As the subdivision has now proceeded, it has been discovered that there are a number of minor alignments that don't quite match between the zoning categories and the actual subdivided lots. The City of Steinbach administration has been in contact with community and regional planning. They are satisfied that the proposed amendments are minor in nature, and as a result, the proposed rezoning bylaw 2116 is being presented to council for both first and second reading. Due to the minor nature, community and regional planning has also confirmed that a public hearing is not required, and recommendation is council give first and second reading to this proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Workman. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Damian Penner? Approved. Councillor Jake Hebert? Second? Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As was noted, this is just essentially rezoning properties in the Lexington Village area to what they should be designated as. There's no major changes with regards to the zoning. It's all staying residential and single-family, residential low density, a little bit of medium density. So nothing major here, just minor rezoning changes.
I would just like to add the developer has been very prudent in the past developments that they've had here. Council's approved previous projects for them, and I just see them as continuing to serve our city well. So yes, this is it's a minor variance here.
Yes, Council, anything further? Anything in closing, sorry.
Not anymore, thank you though.
I went right into it. Still learning the job, I guess. Anyways, yes, Council, this is just some corrections that are being made. So we'll go right into the question, call for the question. All those in favor? All opposed, that is carried. We'll go to second reading. I need a motion for second reading. Councillor Jake Siemens, second by Councillor Bill Hebert. Nothing further?
Nothing further.
Nothing in closing. Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we have C, the bylaw 2121, Realty and Education Tax Levy. This is also first and second reading. It's on page 55 of your packet. Mr. Workendine, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Bylaw 2121 is the proposed 2019 Realty and Education Tax Levy bylaw. This tax levy bylaw is a provincial requirement that the City of Steinbach must go through every year. This does specify the particular mill rates for both the City of Steinbach, the Hanover School Division, and also the Educational Support Levy on behalf of the province of Manitoba. The mill rates are indicated within the draft bylaw, and the recommendation is for council to give this bylaw first and second reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Workentine. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Susan Pinner, motion to approve, and second by Councillor Bill Hebert. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, this is something we're required to do, collect education taxes. In fact, on property tax bills, over half the money the city takes in actually goes to the Hanover School Division to pay for education taxes. Personally, I don't like the way that, that system is set up, because it gives people the perception their property taxes are actually a lot higher than they really are, but there's not a lot we can do about it, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess it's part of the rules, and it's the way we go. So I guess we do approve it.
Okay. Anything further, council? Yes, Councillor Pinner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I as well begrudgingly will support the motion, but I do want to just make note of, if citizens do see their property tax increasing this upcoming year, there's a 2.6% increase from the Hanover School Division, as well as the provincial levy of a 2.2% increase. So while the city had a 0 increase, the increases are coming from education.
Anything further? Anything in closing? Yes, council, I agree with these comments. It's not something we want to do, it's something we have to do. And I agree that, thank you for mentioning the mill rate increases, and that if there is an increase on tax bills, it's not because of the budget that we put forward. So I'll call for the question. All those in favor? And opposed, that's carried. And now we'll go into second reading. Need a motion for second reading. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Penner. Anything in, any comment?
Nothing further.
Nothing in closing, nothing from council? Okay. We'll go right into the question, call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. That brings us to the 9D. That is the Bylaw 2122 Business Tax Levy, and that is also first and second reading. You'll find that on page 79 of your package. Mr. Workentine, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, this proposed bylaw 2122 is similar. However, it does relate to the city's proposed 2019 business tax levy. Also required to be adopted by bylaw by City Council. The business tax levy rate has been or will remain at 0.5%, the same as 2018. And recommendation is for council to give this first and second reading.
Okay, council?
Before the
Yes.
motion, can I ask a question to administration?
Yeah, there's a question from
Through you to administration. Could you explain how it came to, how this was decided upon, or, I know it's a long history, so I don't want you to get into the whole thing, but I'm just wondering what's the, kind of the rationale for giving, because this money comes to us and we give it to the Chamber of Commerce, correct? Is that how this works? It's an in and out, basically?
There has been a connection made. The business tax levy is a general revenue source by the city of Steinbach. It has historically been treated as such. The business tax levy some years ago was at the rate of 1%, but that decreased probably about 12, 13, even 15 years ago, where it's remained at 0.5% today. City councils at the time of the reduction around 15 years ago also had made a separate decision to provide an operating grant to the Steinbach Chamber of Commerce on an annual basis that generally has tended to be roughly equivalent to the same amount of business tax revenues raised each year. So while it's not exactly linked, they are related.
Okay, further to that, but the Chamber of Commerce isn't part of the grants, like, that's not considered a grant in our grants policy though, is it?
It has been considered a grant for purposes of financial reporting. However, city councils throughout the time that grant has been provided, it is recognized that it does have some connection to the business tax levy. That's where it does differ from the regular grant decision process that councils have made.
Is that your questions answered? Okay. Anything further? Okay, council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Fenner. Motion to approve. Seconder. Councillor Siemens. Go ahead, Councillor Fenner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is something that needs to be approved as per our bylaws. It's something that we do need to move forward on at this time. Whether that be revisited at a future date or not is to be determined, but at this point, I feel it's best to move on.
Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a long-standing history with the business tax rate, and it has been in place for likely 40 years, if not more. And there is a long-standing history, and my understanding was the business tax started initially to level the playing field with the residential taxes. And so the community put in an additional business tax to level the playing field on taxes being received. As they were a lot lower from the business community who was using the roads and so forth with more of their heavy truck traffic and water and sewer issues. And so that was put into place to level the playing field with what the residential. And then over the course of time, the provincial government put in regulations into place that would level that playing field as information was flowed down from the province. That's my understanding. So the city has reduced it over the years. They were going to actually eliminate the business tax. There was a proposal put forward in our time here on council that money then, in the ways described by administration, that money, that approximate amount would go before the chamber. Is our support for the chamber. So that is the history, a little bit of the history of it as well, but it is something that we have in place.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Yes, Councillor Penner.
I'm a bit conflicted. I know this is a fairly routine vote here, but part of the challenge for me is a chamber is supposed to operate independently of the city, or at least, I mean, I know some cities give chambers small amounts, but this is a really significant what amounts to operating grant for the chamber, and I wonder, does that impact its ability to, let's say, lobby or advocate, because we're the ones giving them the money, and yet they're supposed to be advocating for their purposes. So for me, this one, I am conflicted about it. I mean, obviously don't want to catch anybody off guard, because it's a big deal if we revisit this. So I will support the motion, but I would like us to revisit that possibly in the near future, just to review it, or at least get a presentation on it, because I don't think it's, I don't know, I do think there's potentially a conflict there, because in theory, chambers should be advocating to reduce business tax, for example. So I'm wondering, some of those kinds of things I'd like to maybe revisit at some point in the future now.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Yes, council, I tend to, I've been conflicted on this right from the start, but we've always gone forward because, you know, the chamber brings added value to our business community in many ways, or at perceived value. So I think that is something why we've gone forward on it too, and I do believe that, yes, I think this is not a bad idea for it to come forward and for us to discuss it. And I think when we just constantly always do things because we were doing them, we've done it 10 years, let's keep doing it, and we never look at why we're doing it, I think we're doing a disservice to our public, we're doing a disservice to the chamber and also to our business community. I think at this time it's best to support this and move on, because we can't just shock anybody. But I think we do need to look at it and just ask ourselves a couple of tough questions. And if we answer them and they end up and we continue it, that's great. But I think we need to continue to always strive to make sure that everything we do it for the right reason. So I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried. And we will go straight into second reading on that. Do I have a motion for second reading? Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Heber. Any comments?
No.
Nothing in closing? Nothing? Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. We'll go to 9E, Bylaw 2103, that's third reading. You'll find that on page 82. Mr. Workendine, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Bylaw 2103, for lack of a better term, it's essentially a do-over. The City of Steinbach was proceeding through a zoning bylaw review in the earlier and mid part of 2018. At that time, Bylaw 2103 was initiated under the previous zoning bylaw 2055. However, by the time City Council had it under consideration to give third reading, the City had already adopted an updated zoning bylaw 2100. So in order to convert bylaw 2103 to a valid bylaw, recommendation is that City Council give third reading to bylaw 2103 again, this time with the correct citation to City of Steinbach zoning bylaw 2100 being the authorizing bylaw, and that would then correct this oversight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Workentine. Council, would you like to proceed? Motion to approve. And second? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. As was noted, this is essentially a clerical correction. This is something that's been discussed previously, has been voted on multiple times, and has been passed through no problem without any issues, so I have no problem going forward of correcting the bylaw.
Anything further? Anything further from council? Anything in closing? Well, council, I understand do-over, especially when I'm golfing. So I think we can gladly do this one over. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have 9F, excavators licenses. This is one of our favorites. Page 86. I need a motion to approve.
Question to administration, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wade, through you. Mr. Workington, is this a physical license that they are given, or is this a clerical license?
I'm not sure the form that it takes. However, it does permit the particular excavator to actually conduct work within the City of Steinbach right-of-ways. It is very important that pre-approval and the license process is followed to ensure that the contractor has the appropriate insurance capabilities, et cetera, to make sure that work in the right-of-ways is conducted properly.
Okay, right on page 86, we do have a motion. Do I have a motion to approve? Councillor Bill Hebert, second by Councillor Damian Penner. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It makes good sense to have them licensed within the City of Steinbach, so I vote to approve.
Anything further? Anything from council? Anything in closing? I call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, number 10, council question period. Do we have any questions of council tonight? Okay, that brings us to 11, correspondence and petitions. 11A, that is Mr. Werner Trapp, a letter of request. The letter is on page 87. Council, you've all read that, and you've seen the drawing. How would you like to proceed? Should we just take that as information today? Okay, thank you very much. There's no other business, and I need a motion for adjournment. Okay, Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Penner. I'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And the next regular council meeting is Tuesday, April 16th, 2019 at 7:30. Thank you.